This is Colin Gray from thepodcasthost.com, and you're listening to Jane Jackson Careers.
Well, hello and welcome back to my Careers podcast, where I interview fascinating professionals who've made amazing career changes. Now, today, I'm really lucky to have with me Paul Darby, who is the Managing Director at AccountAbility Recruitment. And he's going to tell us all about recruitment, how to work with recruiters, and also his really interesting career journey too. So, Paul is a graduate of the University of Hull, and he began his professional career in Paris, working as an English teacher in a French secondary school before transitioning into finance with an American financial services company. He then relocated to their European head office in London, where he worked for 6 years until 2004. And Paul first joined AccountAbility in 2005 and led teams across Australia, recruiting both accounting support and business support roles until the end of 2010. Now, because he's got this great passion for the AccountAbility brand, we saw him return to the business as Managing Director for AccountAbility in early 2013. So he's had quite an eclectic career journey and now leading this amazing group of people at AccountAbility, which is where we first met, because I did a talk at AccountAbility recently. I thought I must speak to Paul and find out about his career journey. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Jane. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you here, and thank you for inviting me to your offices as well. So it's going to be interesting hearing all about your career changes, how you felt about the transition, and then really the nitty-gritty as to the best way to work with recruiters. So how about, to kick us off, just tell me about your early days. When you were a little boy and a teenager, what sort of career aspirations did you have?
Oh gosh, when I was a small child growing up in the Midlands in the UK, I was probably a bit of a frustrated performer, and I had visions of me being on TV or acting or dancing or singing or doing something for everyone to have their eyes on me. Sadly, I didn't have any of the required talent for that, and I, with a school teacher as a father, was encouraged to pursue a more academic line of study. I pursued my studies at school and decided to go and do a French degree in the northeast of England, largely motivated at that stage by the desire to go and live and work overseas. So there wasn't a massive amount of thought around when it came to what academic degree I was going to do. It was just something that I enjoyed doing and was quite good at. So that started, way back in, 1993. And spent 4 years there, during which time I spent 1 year over in Paris, teaching French in a state school. I then returned post-degree to Paris, where I took another role with a state school, again teaching English, which I thoroughly enjoyed. With my father being a school teacher, he actively encouraged me not to pursue that as a career.
Really?
Yeah.
He didn't want you to follow in his footsteps?
He didn't. I think he'd got to the point in his career, he was getting towards the end of his career, and it had changed a lot, and he'd lost a lot of the passion for teaching children, because he was spending a lot more time filling in forms and writing reports and wasn't doing what the job had been when he originally started. So he put me off. I love working with kids, but and in fact training has become a big part of what I do as part of my role here. I still really enjoy taking people who don't know a massive amount and providing them with the skills and the knowledge, and then seeing them fly.
Yeah, that's so rewarding, isn't it?
Really, very much so.
Really, really helping people to grow.
So although I've moved out of the educational sector and into the commercial sector, I still use a lot of the skills that I built up during that time.
And then after that, so you moved. Now, how did you make this transition from teaching into financial services? Because that's unusual, isn't it? What prompted the change?
I'd like to say that it was very well planned, but what happened, as often happens with new graduates, is that I applied for a short-term contract role. When I was working in Paris, and there was an American-owned finance business who had an office of about 20 people in Paris. I applied for a temp role with them and was very quickly offered a permanent position. So I worked with them probably for about 12 months, largely in a sales capacity, until I was approached by one of their competitors to work for them in their London office. So I returned back to the UK. I accepted the role and was counter-offered, and against my better judgment, stuck with the counter-offer and went to work for my existing business over in London. And despite what I now coach people on in terms of dealing with counter-offers, I ignored all of that, and I stayed with them.
Do as I say.
Absolutely.
Is that the case?
I stayed with them and actually worked. I stayed with them for 5 years in their London office and grew a team of people.
Now, coming from the UK as a teacher, moving to Paris, teaching English to French students in secondary school, and then moving into a financial services area, it must have been, you would have been pretty young, and it must have been so much fun working and living in Paris, because that's so many people's dream, and it must have been quite a buzz. What was it like living in Paris?
Oh, it was lovely. I mean, coming from the area I do in the UK, which is very much the country, the bright lights, big city life was something that was very new to me. And I made the absolute most of it during the time I was there. Lived with French people, worked with French people for the most part. So I was forced to speak. I am fluent in French. Please don't ask me to speak it now. So I forced myself into that situation where I had to learn the language and live and breathe the language. For the first 12 months I was there, I didn't actually come back to the UK in all that time. I loved it. I got a great taste for French food and French wine, and it was...
And also, so interesting, because being in France, compared with growing up in the UK, there's that cultural difference too. And I'm just thinking, like the cultural difference between the UK and then in France and working in the European office and then moving to Australia, years later, you must really understand the differences and the little nuances between, like even though, people might speak English, just the way that they act and react, especially Aussies are quite different too. Would have been quite an interesting journey, huh?
Yeah, One of the things that sticks in my mind a lot from my time in France and the way that people work, there was just a huge amount of red tape. Everything required multiple sign-off. There was a lot of waiting. Regularly contending around the time I was there, contending with strikes, which had immediate impact on your ability to get into work because the metros weren't running, or to be able to do your work because you were relying on deliveries and the truck drivers were striking this week. When I was working in the school, we regularly, both the teachers and the students went on strike on a regular basis. It's something that's very
frustrating.
And it's how they get things done. It's very, very different when I moved back to the UK. It was an interesting time. It was still very early in my career, so I didn't have much of a point of reference. It was the first corporate job I'd done. I really enjoyed it. Looking back, it was I was lucky to get the role I did when I was so young, and it certainly led me on to
different things. So it sounds like you didn't really have a plan, Paul.
There was certainly no plan. I don't think I
But all the experiences that you had, I'm just thinking, as a teacher, before going into financial services, moving country, and then, being in a sales role, before moving into a leadership role back in London, it's all a lot to do with communication, and leading individuals and being able to express yourself very, very clearly. Because then when you were in London, how did you get from London to Australia?
Okay, so I moved to London to work for the same business, and quickly grew into a management role. So I was running a team of people there, selling financial solutions to a varied client base. I did that role probably for around 4 or 5 years, and then I was hitting the ripe old age of 29 and decided I was having a bit of an early midlife crisis, and decided I wanted to go travelling around the world. I'd bought my first flat in London and had found somebody who was willing to rent it out. So I got my working holiday visa and planned a round-the-world trip. Australia was the second stop on that trip, and I didn't get any further.
Wow, so much for around the world.
Yeah.
So, and you couldn't really go much further than Australia.
No.
And so getting down here, you realised, what was it that appealed to you about Australia?
When I first came here, having lived in London for the 5 years prior, everything here was clean, fresh, new. People were happy. The weather certainly helped.
I think the weather is a big factor, isn't it?
Yeah, it really made a big difference. And making sales calls, getting into a recruitment role and making sales calls to potential new clients, and being called mate on the second phone call, and people being really willing to speak to and engage with me was eye-opening. It was so far removed from anything I'd experienced in the UK. It was a much more down-to-earth way of working, which I think suits me a lot more.
Yeah, and there's that cultural difference, isn't it? Because being in a sales role or in a sales capacity, and then I guess it must have been quite a hard slog in the UK initially, because people aren't quite so open. Maybe it's because of the cold. I don't know. I mean, or it's just Brits, and I'm half English myself, so I know I can be a bit stuffy at times. So being in a sales role, so you must have found it quite challenging in the UK, and then when you came over here, and then being in recruitment and developing like relationships so easily, must have been an eye opener.
Yeah, and it was really satisfying to. Now, I moved over here in 2005 when the market was very different to what it's like currently. Companies were crying out for talent, and they were really struggling to find good people. So, in hindsight, I think my experience of business development when I first moved here was probably slightly skewed by the fact that people desperately needed what we had to offer. I just thought it was down to my skill and personality, opening all the doors.
Sure,
but
it had a part to play as well.
But it was every other phone call we were able to get an opportunity to go out and present to a client, and the way that Australians engage, the whole down to earth demeanour of most Aussies that I worked with, is something that I've really enjoyed. It's not I didn't like the suited and booted, stuffy approach that a lot of the London businesses I worked with had, and I had quite a lot of success quite quickly here. I do think the market had a lot to do with that, but I took it and ran with it.
That's good. And so you enjoyed your time as a recruiter, and you've sort of worked your way up.
Yes.
Because now as managing director of accountability, and you're leading this team. And every time I've come into this office, I've just noticed, and I was saying to you earlier before we started the interview, that everyone's so friendly. They all seem so happy. They're all just beaming. And I'm thinking, well, I've worked in recruitment before, and it's not always that sort of atmosphere. So you've created a really inclusive culture where it looks like everyone enjoys coming in here, which is unusual for a sales type organisation, within recruitment, because you do have your KPIs to meet, you've got your targets to meet, and sometimes it can be quite a struggle. So what is it about accountability that makes everyone so happy to be here?
I think it's we're part of a wider group, the Ambition Group, and Nick Waterworth and Paul Lyons, who set the group up originally, had a very clear idea of the type of people that they wanted working here and the type of environment they wanted to create. I came on board in 2005, and even though the people themselves have changed over the last 11 years, the type of people we hire has been very similar. Our main values are passion, resourcefulness, integrity, drive, and enjoyment. And the enjoyment thing is really key for me. I want to make sure that people are coming in and enjoying the for candidates coming in and meeting with us, that they enjoy the interaction they have with us, that our clients enjoy the relationship they have with us, and for the staff here on site, that they enjoy coming into work every day in what can be a really high pressured work environment, and fairly challenging at times. You've got to be able to smile. It's really
if you don't have a sense of humour, it's not going to work, is it? But I think that's the thing, because we spend 75-80% of our lives working. If you don't leap out of bed in the morning and think, great, can't wait to get there, or at least I'm really looking forward to seeing the people that I work with, as well as the job function. It's got to be a good combination.
I think that's what we keep people here for quite a long time, and I think that's it's a lot to do with the people that we get, and
that's unusual. Unusual in recruitment.
Absolutely. I think we've been very lucky to attract the people that we've attracted, and it's in an industry that does have quite a high turnover of staff. We've done particularly well at hanging on to the good ones.
Yeah. So now recruitment. I have so many clients going through transition, looking for jobs, and they don't really know the best way to approach recruiters. So you, being MD of Accountability, are the perfect person to give us the real lowdown on how do we work with recruiters. Why are some recruiters so difficult to get in contact with? Why so many of my clients complain that recruiters never return phone calls and all that sort of thing. So can you just lift the veil of confusion so people know? So first of all, what's the best way to approach a recruitment consultant or a recruitment consultancy?
There are probably a few ways. We of course get a lot of people approach us through direct ad applications for live roles that we have, but that only accounts for a small part of our sourcing of candidates. We get particularly across the business support space, we get quite a lot of people referred through. So I think if you're actively looking for a role, absolutely send your application through. Follow up with a phone call with the agency to introduce yourself.
Important.
Phone call's really important to make you stand out from the crowd. But over and above that, if you've worked with somebody who you know is engaged with an agency elsewhere, get them to refer you in. If they're a good candidate themselves, they tend to know good people.
Yeah.
And again, it will put you to the top of the pile. If you imagine, if I advertise a role and I get 300 applications overnight, the people I'm likely to look at are those who've maybe taken the effort to pick up the phone to check that their application's been received. Clearly, if all 300 do that, I'm not going to be able to get hold of everybody. I think one of the important things to remember is that as an agency, we, as much as candidates are our product, effectively, we're working for clients. So clients who pay the bill, and we need to make sure we're giving the clients exactly what they want. In order to do that, we see quite a lot of candidates come through the door, and we're not going to be able to place every single one of them into work.
And you can't magic up a role that's going to be just the right fit, because I would imagine you work with your clients, they give you a brief, they say, okay, and you focus on finance and office support professionals.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So they say, okay, we need someone with this personality, these qualifications, this sort of experience. If you give them someone completely random, then your reputation goes out the window and they may or may not work. So you need to have someone who actually is quite a good match to their requirements, isn't it?
And so you can imagine if we have 150 people apply for a role and we're expected to produce a shortlist of 3 or 4 people, there are a lot of people who through that process are going to be disappointed. What's important for me is that everybody who has interaction with us as a business, regardless of whether we secure them a role or not, has an enjoyable experience when they come in. And that even though we don't find them a role at the end, that they've enjoyed the connection they've had. I've had a number of clients who have been unsuccessful candidates. So they've come to us as a candidate. We haven't been able to get them the role they wanted, but they've enjoyed the interaction so much they then have used us further down the line as a.
So they like the way, the integrity with which you work. And so with your team members and all the recruiters who work here, is it mandated that they must return phone calls? Or, I mean, what happens? Because so many of my clients, when they work with other recruitment agencies as well, it's like, I try and get through and I can never get through and I just want to get some feedback. So what's the real reason behind recruiters not giving as much feedback as candidates might like?
I think, we typically can be fairly time poor, but I don't think that's an excuse for not calling back and responding to phone calls. It's my expectation if someone leaves a message that they get a call back, that we don't leave people hanging.
That's refreshing because it doesn't always happen, elsewhere. So that I guess that's all part of the culture here, where your recruiters, they enjoy coming in. They do, they have the time. You encourage them to develop the relationships. So I think that's the key. That's the difference. So it sounds like people are not treated as a number here.
No, absolutely not. And we've actually invested in bringing in candidate-focused consultants. So as well as our consultants that will work on live roles whose job it is in part to develop new business for us and go out and win new clients. We've got consultants that are purely dedicated to candidate sourcing and who remain in contact with the candidates for us and make sure there's a proper candidate care program in place for anyone we have placed, and also that there's regular touch points with those people that as yet we haven't placed.
I like that candidate care program. How wonderful. I don't think a lot of companies have that. No, so that's the key, I think, to the the warm fuzzy experience that people get when they come here.
I think it's about having a long-term focus. It's not just about this job now with this candidate that I'm meeting today. It's about the relationship with both the client and the candidate and where that may be in the next 2 years or 5 years. We've got candidates that we have placed through their career. Each time they've needed a new move, they've come to us and we've moved them on to the next place. Equally, we've got clients we've had who've moved businesses but have taken us with them.
Fantastic.
And rather than going down and having to break down new doors every day, surely it's better to look after the relationships that you've already got.
Exactly. It's all to do with the relationship. And in that way, it's almost like inbound marketing. People will come to you rather than you having to pick up the phone and make a cold call, which is always so hard. Cold calling,
one's favourite.
it's just scary. Some people love it. Some people love it, but certainly I don't. So what are the roles that you place here?
Yeah, so across the accountability brands, we cover transactional accounting, so accounts payable, receivable, payroll, assistant accountant, grad accountant, and then on the support side, it's more around your executive assistants, personal assistants, office managers, reception, and general admin staff. Outside of the accountability brand, there's our sister company Ambition, who cover qualified accounting and various areas of technology.
So technology, finance, office support, and then Watermark is part of your group too, yes?
Watermark is indeed part of the group. They're an executive search firm, and we work fairly separately to them, given the nature of what they do. But for the rest of us, for accountability and ambition, we're all here on site in one location. So we've got offices in Brisbane and Melbourne as well, and then overseas in KL, Singapore, Hong Kong, and London.
Oh, fantastic. So global organisation, accountability and ambition.
So Ambition is the global brand. Accountability Australia is only in Australia. But I deliberately chose a place with offices in different countries because, as you probably gathered, I like to move around.
But you've been in Australia for quite a while now. Yeah. So what are your plans, Paul? You enjoy it here. Is it one day in the distant future return to the UK, or have you made Australia your home now?
Australia is my home with ageing parents and brothers and sisters having kids. The pull of the UK is there. I'm still holding out for that acting job or television presenting job. But
what would be the dream? What would be the dream if you were going to choose? Would you be on The Bold and the Beautiful, or?
I think I've got a better face for radio. If I could do my dream, so about 3 or 4 years ago, I moved into a part-time role here. I did 4 days a week and studied at Sydney Film School. So making not in front of the camera, behind the camera, making movies. That I thoroughly enjoyed.
So that film production is
so production, direction, writing, that side of things. I'm not massively technical when it comes to camera and lighting, but thankfully there are a lot of people who were. But I really enjoyed that whole collaborative environments where you come up with a nugget of an idea and then you bring a group of people together to help build on that, and suddenly it takes on a life of its own. If I could do that for a living,
you'd love it.
I would absolutely love it, but you require an awful lot of talent and an awful lot of luck. I'm not sure I have either of them, but it was a very enjoyable hobby. But in a dream world, that's what I'd do.
Well, you could create a really good video of accountability, couldn't you? A day in the life of a recruiter. I'm sure everyone would love to know exactly what you guys do. It would be really interesting. But having that outlet, the creative outlet, is so important too. So it sounds like you've got really good balance in your career. You've got your international experience. You've transitioned into different industries. You're now leading a fabulous group as MD of Accountability, and you've got this creative outlet too. So life is pretty good for Paul Darby.
Life is pretty good.
Well, thank you so much. It was really lovely finding out about you and the journey and what it's like, to work with recruiters and how to approach recruiters as well. So that's been really valuable. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with? What would your top 3 tips for success as a candidate be?
As a candidate, top 3 tips for a candidate would be tailor your application to the specific role that you're applying for. And I don't necessarily mean in terms of a cover letter, but don't be afraid of having a resume that speaks to different types of roles and highlights relevant experience in your background. Cast the net as widely as possible when you are looking. Don't just go down the same route as everybody else. So absolutely speak to agencies, but use your own network. Networking is really important. It really is. We run a number of functions here where we bring together clients or candidates where they're able to freely network and really build up their. We may not always have the right role for you, but somebody in our network might. So I'd really encourage people who are actively looking for work and serious about a career in a certain area to create networks across those areas.
And you have regular networking events here too?
We do.
Actually, I spoke at one last week.
We have wonderful speakers. We do that across the business support area and the accounting support area, and again across the qualified finance and IT. So we're fairly active in that space. It's about creating communities of talent. And ultimately, great if we can place them ourselves. But I know we've created connections that have resulted in people finding work that hasn't necessarily been directly through us.
But it's all part of that feel-good factor and the wonderful experience of accountability. So top 3 tips. First one is tailor your application, cover letter and resume, and obviously keywords are important, right? Second one is to cast the net wide and not only work with recruiters, but use your own network to develop those relationships. And what would be the third one? I'm putting you under the pump here.
You are putting under the pump.
What's the next thing a candidate needs to do?
In order to stand out from the crowd, the more flexible you are and the more open you are to slightly different opportunities and maybe looking slightly outside the box that you put yourself in will make you, certainly when engaging with agencies, will make you more valuable. So if you're flexible around where you will work or there's a bit of a buffer around the salary expectation or the type of work that you wanted to do, you're going to be more marketable. More marketable, absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay. And I think the thing is to be open, with your recruitment consultant too. I'm sure that would be important, is to respond to messages from the recruiter. If they need to contact you, it's probably quite urgent that they want this role filled. And if you're the perfect one, you don't return the phone call, you'll miss out on an opportunity because there will always be someone else ready to step up to the plate.
Absolutely. The communication thing is an absolute two-way street, and it's highly frustrating when you've managed to secure an opportunity for interview for a candidate and you can't get hold of them. So if you're engaging with an agency, just keep those lines of communication open, let them know what else you've got going on. If you're going to be gone in the next week, then let your recruiter know so that they can do something with their clients to maybe push the process forward. So that communication's key, and it's been key to my whole career, as you've pointed out, and hopefully will continue to.
Wonderful. And so we can find you at, what's the website?
It is www.accountability.com.au, or for the group, it's at www.ambition.com.au.
I'll put that in my show notes on my website, so
Wonderful.
If anyone would like to get in touch with Accountability in Sydney, they can reach Paul.
Cool. If you're calling through to Accountability, absolutely ask for me.
Yeah.
If you're calling through to Ambition, there's a gentleman by the name of David Bamford who heads up that division.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. That was really fun chatting to you and everything that you've done. Do you want to say anything French before we go?
Oh, way to put me on the spot. Bon, merci. C'était vachement bien. J'ai beaucoup aimé être avec toi cet après-midi. Et bon courage.
Oh my goodness! For someone who didn't want to say anything in French, suddenly it was awfully long. So merci. Bye, Paul. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download and free 30-day trial at audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers. There are over 180,000 book titles to choose, so give it a go and get your free audiobook today from audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers.
You've been listening to Jane Jackson Careers. Sign up to receive regular career advice at janejacksoncoach.com.